Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 6 Degrees of KB. I'm Kristen Brady, your John Green Realtor, your connection maker, and I want to introduce you to one of my degrees. I have with me Jeremy Meek today with Discovery Inspections. Welcome. Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
to my
Thanks for
show.
having me.
So glad you're here. I just feel like you are such a huge asset to my business and to so many of the homeowners that I serve that I just wanted to introduce you to my network, my community here, because I think you have something so valuable for all of us. So I'm so appreciative that you're here.
Yeah.
How we met was kind of fun. I was already working with a home inspector at the time. We had a John Green polo event that you were invited to.
Right.
Tell everybody about what that means to you, what the polo event means for you.
Well, the polo event is always fun for me. It's a chance. Well, it's an annual event that John Green puts on. I'm sure most of the viewers know, but had started sponsoring that a few years back, and so it's a chance for me to catch up with agents and past clients of yours and have fun and bring the family. And so that is one of the real estate events that I'm involved with every year that we really look forward to.
Yeah, it's a good
So,
time. I often tell my sponsors, which I think they think I'm lying, I'm like, this can actually benefit your business
oh
because it's
yeah,
a networking opportunity for
it is.
business owners, right? You get
Yep.
to know other people and you get to keep those connections going with our clients because let's face it, they're probably going to sell their home and buy another at some point. So I would love for you to keep those connections going as we
Right.
continue to grow and evolve. So,
Well, and one thing that I didn't know in the beginning is that you guys share tents a lot. A lot of you share tents with other agents or other professionals. And while we may know one or two of you, we don't know everybody.
yeah.
And so you're right. It is a good chance to
Well,
meet
that's exactly
agents.
how
And
I met you,
yeah,
right? Deanna
right,
Schmoody was one of your
right.
agents, and she
Yeah,
introduced me, and I'm like, oh, I don't need to meet Jeremy. I already have a home
yeah,
inspector,
yeah.
which is
I
so
get that.
funny because my home inspector ended up retiring, which is just the craziest story because after he retired, I reached out to Deanna. I'm like, hey, who is that nice guy at Polo that was the home inspector that you prefer?
Yeah.
And so that's when I started working with you. And then it was a few months later when I realized that Bill was one of your like guides in home inspections, right?
Well, he's definitely a mentor over the years. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
He's been around forever. He's got a reputation.
yeah. Kill
Both,
Bill. Have you ever
yeah.
heard
Oh,
that?
yeah. Yeah. Heard of Kill Bill. That's who I heard from the agents, inspectors. He's just the sweetest guy, and a lot of people know him, but also very sharp. And
Yeah.
so we learn a lot from him
Yeah,
over the
Bill was
years.
so he was referred to me when I very started selling real estate, and he was my preferred go-to. And I didn't know anything else, but he was so thorough, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
I loved about him. And so when I was looking for a home inspector, I'm like, how do I find someone who's comparable to somebody like Bill, right? And
Right.
so I remember I had a home inspection once. We were in like a 2,000 square foot home, which is a,
Yeah.
normal size house. And this guy was in and out in 45 minutes. I'm like, did you even go on the roof? Like, did you get
Right.
in the attic? Like, what? Yeah. So it's funny because some agents will say like, your home inspector takes 3 to 4 hours. Like, what are they doing in there? And
Yeah.
I'm like, what
I got
is
a
your
guy that'll take
inspector doing?
45 minutes.
Exactly.
Right. Well, yeah.
Exactly.
It's just it's the perspective of the agent and really understanding. Well, I guess in my opinion, what your responsibility is to your client.
That's right.
And it's while it's best for your schedule to be in and out of there in an hour, the client just really isn't getting the level of detail
That's
that
right.
they should be
And
getting.
this is their biggest purchase in their life. This is about to be their home. Should be
Right.
not only safe and sound, but knowing, I mean, I think one of the things you're really great at is talking about maintenance on a home too, like as they're living in the home. Might not
Yeah.
be something that we need to ask for credit for the potential sellers to help us out with, but you're really good at recognizing, hey, when you move in, these are the top things that you should probably start taking care of. So,
Yeah. Something we try to keep in perspective, and talking about maintenance and upgrades is always important because there's always things, codes change, standards change, what we do that works. We learn a lot over time, and old houses aren't always up, they're never up to current standards. So it's always
sure.
nice to be able to share with people. This is nothing that you have to do, but this is something that will make either the durability of the house better, or the safety of the house better, or your air quality better. Just sharing stuff like that, but also relaying to them, this is nothing that's required. You can't ask for this, but it is stuff that'll help you out long term.
Totally. All right, so let's talk about Jeremy a little bit. So obviously you own the inspection company.
Right.
How did you get here? Like what led you to this place? How did you start this business?
So I used to I guess this kind of ties into another question that you had on your list. Something that a lot of people may not know about me is for years I was a licensed landscape architect. And so I worked in land development, construction, and had a little crossover with the land guys at John Green,
Sure.
with like Tim specifically. And so I was doing that for years, but around 2008, things were a little rough
Well,
on
yeah,
the
that was a tough
economy,
year.
and municipal projects and private development was kind of on hold. And so I started to look at options that basically to fill the time. And we, at the same time this was going on, we were getting ready to have baby number two. We were in a tiny house. We needed to move. It was the worst possible time to move, but I also needed to think about something new with work. I mean, it's just a crazy time to be having a kid, moving, thinking about changing professions. But in that process, my wife had mentioned home inspection, and it's nothing that I ever really put a lot of stock into. But grew up in houses that were constantly getting worked on. I like working on my own house, and it was just something that she said you ought to look into. So ultimately, the barrier to entry is embarrassingly low, but it's also great as a second career to say, I didn't have to spend a lot of money or time to get started.
Yeah.
And so, I made that transition and thought it would be kind of a temporary thing,
Yeah.
but also realized after a little while that it offered me some flexibility that I didn't have working for other folks. And so I kind of missed the land development side, but I wouldn't trade it, for this any day.
Because you do this full time now. This is the only gig you have,
Yeah, I've
right?
done this full
Yeah.
time. I mean, I started this business started in 2012,
Okay.
and I transitioned to full time shortly after I incorporated.
Yeah.
So it's I think that the other day I was looking, we're about 7,000 inspections in, which is a lot of buildings, a lot of
Wow.
houses,
It's a lot of people that you've
a
served.
lot
That's
of
pretty
people.
incredible.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it turned out to be a good fit for me. I'd missed land development was great, but I spent a lot of time in an office, and I missed getting my hands dirty.
Sure.
And but I knew I wasn't going to go back into the trades at the age I was. And this was kind of a nice in between.
Yeah. So, what are some of the most common issues that you see when you look at homes in our area? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so there's lots of overlap between houses. I mean, we see a lot of the same things come up. Um, Roof damage. We have our hailstorms and our spring storms that we're going to be blowing shingles off and things like that. So
Oh,
looking
yeah.
for that sort of damage. Um, Foundation cracks, common cracks are what we see the most. Typical concrete cracks,
I talk
small
a,
electrical
I
items.
talk about that the foundation cracks a lot with first time home buyers. I'm like, we
Hmm.
live in Illinois where it's really cold winters, really hot summers, expand and contract like that.
Sure.
It happens even in foundations, right?
Yeah. Well,
So, would you say that that's something like you would still purchase a home if it had that kind of issue, right? Like it's
yeah, depending on the level of the crack,
okay.
right? Or cracks, right? Sometimes cracks add up, right, to a bigger
Mm-hmm.
problem. But
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, usually I'm telling people that it's less common for me to see the perfect foundation. It's more common to see some cracks,
Mm-hmm.
and then at that point, how big of a deal are those cracks? Are they, typical, or is it something that's leaking,
Yeah.
or maybe there's more going on that we need to look into? But that's all part of putting together all the clues as we're looking at the house.
I remember when I first started real estate and I heard the word mold and I
Hmm.
immediately panicked and I was like, "Oh, you
Yeah.
want to back out of this deal immediately."
Right.
Tell me, is that something that you think is a little bit more common that we see?
Yeah, I mean, we see mold in houses a lot. I think it gets a little overblown depending on the location of the mold. I mean, we see mold in attics a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just partially because of our climate, right? We've got houses we heat all winter. We lose heat into these attics. It condensates and becomes a moisture problem or mold.
Sure.
I think a lot of folks forget or aren't thinking about that the attic is typically outside, right? It's outside your conditioned space. It's outside the typical building envelope. So while it does suggest there's a concern with the efficiency of the home, we don't want to rot it out sheathing from moisture,
Sure.
but is it something that's going to affect the indoor air quality? And I would say more often than not, probably not.
Yeah.
Now, if mold's in the house,
That's a little
that may be
different.
different.
Sure.
EPA's
Sure.
says that anything under, I think it's 9 square feet is basically a home owner issue. It's a self self-remediation project, right? And that usually falls into like, I've got some mold around the bathtub, or I've got, a little bit of mold on in a corner in a basement, right? Again, something to be a little bit concerned about,
Sure.
because there's conditions that are creating that, making, it good for mold growth. But more often than not, it's something that's very easily addressed. And then I guess if it's a larger problem inside, it, it can be an issue. There are some, mold affects everybody differently, kind of like a lot of colds and COVID and all that good stuff. It hits everybody a little bit different.
Sure.
So, we test some homes that are very high in mold and have occupants that have lived there forever and have very little effect from it. Like say grandma's house, right? Every time you go over there, it smells like the basement, right? And people are concerned about that. And grandma's lived there for 40 years and not
Yeah.
had an
Yeah.
issue. And then vice versa. Sometimes we go in a house and it's like, I don't see any problem here. It looks totally clean. And we test it, and mold spore levels are
Oh
high,
my gosh.
right?
Yeah.
And there is a problem. So I don't know. Mold's tricky because a lot of sometimes you can see it, but sometimes it's there and you can't. Um, it's worth checking out, but then it also is kind of an individual thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a
Yeah.
problem, sometimes it's not.
For sure.
Would I not buy a house like an attic full of mold? You know, I would still buy a house with mold in the attic, partially because it's something that I can look at and understand. Okay, these are the conditions causing the problem. I know how to address this.
Hmm.
But I know for some people, just the word alone is a no go.
Yeah.
It's kind of like mice,
Yeah.
right? All they have to hear is the word, and they're out.
That's so funny.
Whereas again, that's another thing that's treatable.
Yeah.
So I don't
Definitely.
know. Everything's possible. Everything's fixable.
Yes.
It's only money,
Yes.
right?
So would you say that new construction maybe is a little bit safer and maybe doesn't need an inspection, or how would you feel about that versus like an old home?
Yeah. No, we do brand new and old alike inspections, and so we find plenty of problems in new construction. I will say the likelihood of large problems is lower.
Sure.
But we do find issues that typically we want to point out for the builder to repair. I mean, bigger issues that have come up is, we've gotten up in attics and they forgot to insulate, right? Again, easy fix at the time, but it's like, oh man, they could have been here a period of time before they realized their
Sure.
attic was not
Sure.
insulated, siding having to be removed and reinstalled,
Oh, I've had a few
roof,
friends with those issues.
yeah,
That's no
roof need to
fun.
be replaced. Um, again, those aren't every new construction, but
Sure.
it's kind of like, I always get the question, well, would you radon test this house? Would you sewer scope this house? Would you inspect this house?
Great
I've given
questions.
up trying to guess because I've never, there's no rule of thumb by looking at a house or a specific situation and really being able to know enough about it without digging in a little bit further.
Sure. Sure. But isn't it so nice to be able to give people that peace of mind as they're moving in? I always encourage everybody, like, do all the inspections now so you know what you're getting into.
Right,
I know it's not always the best news that you're delivering at the end of a home inspection that we do
right.
together, but what a just a huge blessing that you are for all of these people to be able to say, here's what's going on. One of the things I really love about you, Jeremy, is that you're really good about connecting with people where they are and saying, like, hey, here's some of the issues, but they're so easily managed. Like, if you go to Menards and get this part and do this thing,
Right.
you don't have to necessarily spend hundreds or thousands of dollars by getting a professional in here. This is just part of home maintenance, home projects. So.
Well, yeah, and some people need to hear that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
This is normal. You're going to have to, change the wax ring on that toilet once in a while, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is part of my job is to be able to try to quickly build rapport, right, in a very short period of time, but then also, figure out where people are in their home buying journey. Have they
Sure.
had properties before? Is it the first time? Are they worry warts?
Mhm.
Do they not care enough? Sometimes you have to be like, all right, we got to look at this, quit
Yeah.
measuring for the
Yeah.
curtains, and you got to change these filters and that kind of thing. So yeah, we got to do our best to determine as quickly as possible where these people are at in their
Yeah.
home buying experience, and then I guess fashion the information we give to suit them. But
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite parts of the job is just I have empathy for these people, whoever they are buying a home. I've been through it multiple times myself, and I've worked on houses for years, and it's no fun having a big surprise, right?
Right.
Something fail. And I
Absolutely.
would never want that for anybody. So our goal is to get as much information as we can. I mean, I warn everybody, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't have x-ray vision. Um, we can only see what we can see at the time of the inspection, but we're not trying to rush through it. We want to give you as much information as possible. So, you know, some people are. It's funny because they'll call and they'll say, "Well, we want a really thorough inspection," and part of me wants to be like, "Well, I don't do those," or something. You know, like something.
Oh, you
Of
want
course,
the
yeah,
$1,000 package
right,
today.
right,
Got it.
yeah. Of course, we do a thorough inspection. Part of us staying in business and having the reputation that we have is not because we're rushing through things
That's right.
or leaving you with
That's
problems
right.
undue. You know.
Have you ever done a home inspection that seemed like it was just way too many red flags and you're telling people to just run?
Yeah. Well, I definitely have that feeling on some houses. You
Okay.
know, I can't flat out say run. You know, one thing I learned early on that kind of put things in perspective for me is, and this goes both ways depending on the buyers. You know, I've seen things where I think this house should be condemned. I mean, it is an absolute
Wow.
pile of garbage.
Wow.
But the people buying are coming from a worse situation where this is actually a step in the right direction for them. It gets them in a house.
Got it.
They can deal with some of these problems. I mean, part of that is getting to know the client while you're there,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
But yeah, so I have had some where, you know, you walk out, you peel off your clothes, you throw them in the laundry immediately. You know, they're rough, but
Oh,
once in a
geez.
while there are those people that you realize they're going to work it out.
Yeah.
They've got friends in the trades. They're in the trade. Whatever it is, they're prepared for it because it's something better than where they're at, which is no house
Yeah.
or whatever.
That's true.
But yeah, there are some too where, especially with like a new home buyer that doesn't really understand the degree to which the number of problems that they have. How you know, I get some that are over relaxed. They're like, it's fine. You know, we don't care. We'll take care of it. I think they're just a little bit anxious to get in a house,
Sure.
not necessarily understanding that, you know, some of these repairs are very expensive. Or while everything may be working today, you're going to need the roof, furnace, air conditioner. You're going to need all this
Mm-hmm.
within the first couple of
Mm-hmm.
years. And so while I can't tell somebody to run, I usually will pile up. I guess I try to put it in the best perspective as I can, but you pile up those problems and really explain to them,
Yeah.
you know, you've got some big expenses coming. If you're prepared for that, great. But if you're not, there's a lot of houses out there,
Yeah.
you know, and I know that's tough on the real estate agent
Yeah.
side.
You can say that
But
easily.
well, and you know, we also work with a variety of agents. You want for your clients a very thorough inspection.
I do.
Not everybody wants that.
I worked with a lot of agents before. Like I said, they're like, you spend 4 hours in a home inspection. Like, who has that kind of time? And I'm like, I'd rather spend that time now than in a month from now. My clients are like, we have to sell this house because there's all these issues and we can't live here. Now,
Right.
how am I supposed to sell that?
Or get
Right?
pulled into a lawsuit
That's right.
because things
That's right.
things weren't expressed in a way that, or at least the client didn't feel like they were protected in the transaction.
Yeah. I often hear you talking about maintenance on a home and talking to clients about maintaining their home. I know one of those items is always keeping that furnace clean. That's so important. Do you have any other nuggets that we can share with potential homeowners that, you know, might just be a gentle reminder of, hey, if you're a homeowner, you should be maintaining your home in these ways?
Gutters and downspouts, there's nothing fancy about them, right? But if they're not working, you can have a wet basement pretty quickly. So just that's a reminder to people. You do have to get up and clean out these gutters a couple times a year, you know, or
Yeah.
more depending on if you've got trees. So that is something that's an easy maintenance item. You just have to be diligent with.
Okay.
Kind of like your furnace filter. You know, some have 30-day filters, some have 6-month or 12-month filters. We will identify that and let them know that it needs to be done and how to keep up with that. Maintenance on the humidifiers is very important. You know, they can add a little bit of moisture to the house, but those water pads get pretty nasty,
Mm-hmm.
and then that circulates that moldy, gross air through
Yep.
the house. So,
Yep.
I mean, those are some, I guess, top of mind items. Take your hoses off in the fall. There's really a pretty good list of maintenance items that are ongoing. But some of that is just identifying the house they're buying, what exactly do they have, and then kind of walking them through the things that they should watch the closest, you know.
This is kind of fun. Some inspector mythbusters.
Mm.
Old houses are money pits. How do you feel about that?
I would argue any house can be a money pit. Some of it depends on how it was originally maintained. Old houses are unique.
I've heard this saying a lot of like, they don't build them the way they used
Right,
to,
there's that too.
right?
They're solid, you know, old growth lumber. We don't
Yeah.
have that anymore. They're fire resistant, rot resistant, but they're also leakier, you know, less efficient. Um, Nothing's plumb or square or level, you know. Some of that is talking to the client. What are you expecting? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
have you lived in an old house before?
Yes.
And you get those, they're like, oh yeah, I've lived in old houses before. And then it's like, okay, you understand that you can roll a ball from one end of the house to the other, and that's okay with you.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I think any house can be a money pit if you're not keeping up with your maintenance and the repairs. Um, they can be a mess pretty quick. I've had people call me for inspections that aren't in a real estate transaction. They're not even really thinking of selling, but I've had them say, you know, we've lived here for 16 years and we've done nothing or we've done very
Mm,
little, and we know we got to get after some things, but we need help prioritizing our
sure.
projects.
That's a good point.
And so I think there's a good number of people that just have not been walked through home maintenance or understand, you know, maybe they were always, I don't know, first time home buyers that were always renters and just assume like things work themselves out. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, any house can be a money pit. Old houses, I love old houses. Um, but you have to know going into it.
Yeah.
Projects are a little trickier. You might have some asbestos you got to deal with.
Sure.
It's going to be leaky house. You know, you got to
Sure.
work on energy improvements and
Yeah.
but you know, the idea is you go in with open eyes. Another, just having inspections, especially someone that's had houses, um, rentals, you know, that sort of thing is important. A lot of these guys that come through the schools, home inspection can be learned like anything, right? You can get some excellent technicians that don't really have a background in doing anything with houses, but maybe they have that lack of ownership or experience in working on houses, don't spend every, you know, spare moment they have in Menards or whatever, like I like to, and they just don't know how to guide people or make it clear to them what needs to happen moving forward.
All right. I got another inspector mythbuster. If someone says, "Is this true or false?" A home passed inspection, so it's got to be perfect.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of expectation, especially on the new construction side, that oh, the municipal inspector didn't call it out or say it was a problem. Builders love to say that. Oh, it passed inspection. It's like okay, um, municipal inspectors are focused on a single item usually or a single system, and they're in and out of there pretty quickly because they are underpaid, overworked, in my opinion. They've got,
Mm-hmm.
especially in these areas that are growing so quickly, they have to see a lot of homes in a single day, and you know they're doing their best. But
Yeah.
just like us, you know, we're all human. They're not going to catch every last problem. I would never say I'm going to catch everything. It's good to have some checks and balances, some additional
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
Code inspectors also are typically, like I said, looking at one system and don't always understand the interplay between systems. There are things that a home inspector sees from a higher level, I guess,
Sure.
and understand how everything works together as a system in the house. And so, you
Well,
know,
I
I
think
think that's
I
an
think a
area.
fireplace is a perfect example of that. Like you can look with a flashlight up the fireplace down from the roof, but you're like, well, I can't really check all the masonry and the
Right,
inside, so let's get a specialist,
right,
right?
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good example.
Yeah. Well, it's
Um,
similar to what we do anyway. I mean, we're generalists.
yeah.
We're looking for problems. We don't understand everything, and a lot of times we will have to say, oh, "This is you need a technician in here. You need to dig
Yep.
into this further, whatever it is."
Yeah, I know we've called a lot of structural engineers over the years of
Yeah.
like, okay, this looks a little shaky,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah. Well, then that's one of those scary items, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you see significant damage to like engineered trusses, or you see a block foundation with a lot of cracking or
Mm-hmm.
bowing. It's that's the time.
Yeah.
You know, that's the time to find it out. I'll run into trust issues a lot of times with people, and you know, it's something that's been a bit, say, a cut truss or a few cut trusses. It's been that way for 25 years. Probably happened either at the time it was built or someone did something silly years ago, and everything's holding. It looks
Mhm.
fine.
Mhm.
But my worry for them is, you can probably live with this without problem, but when you sell,
That's
somebody's
what
going to say, you
that's
need to
right.
hire a structural engineer
Yeah.
and you need to fix this. So,
That's why I
you
tell
know,
people to test radon. I'm like, it's cost you $200 to run that test. Just check and see if you have it.
just
Because
find
if it
out
comes
now.
back, it's rather put it on the seller for $2,000 to get that mitigation
Right.
system than for you to pay it
Right.
5 years from now when you sell it. And those
Yeah.
buyers are probably going to check it.
Yep. There really is. I mean, the risk reward as far as additional testing with a home inspection. I mean, I tell everybody it's tough because you've been through negotiations. You're kind of already stretching in most cases to make this purchase. You don't really want to spend another 2 grand or whatever it ends
Sure.
up being to get all the tests and the
Sure.
inspection. But man,
Are
can
they
it save
necessary?
you
Yeah,
problems down the line. Nothing
absolutely.
worse than getting the call, you know, 6 months after someone's moved in. My sewer backed up. Why didn't you catch this? Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let me look. Oh, it does look like we talked about. I mean, I talked to everybody about things like that.
Yes.
And if problems come up, I'm real sorry, but it
I
does
do love
happen.
that you make yourself readily available, though. I mean, how many of my clients have called you after they've moved into the home to say, "Hey, Jeremy, I remember we talked about this
Oh yeah.
situation.
Oh
Can
yeah.
you remind me what your suggestion was on?"
Yeah.
And people tell me all the time, "Oh, I talked to Jeremy. He was so great. He gave you all these suggestions." I'm like, "Oh, well, I hope you gave him a little tip because you didn't pay him for that." Just
No,
kidding.
no, and I don't mind doing that. I mean,
So awesome.
any of my free time, I'm pretty much sitting in the car going between inspections. It's a great time for me to catch up with people, and I
It's
get that.
awesome.
I get those calls pretty often. Oh, I was going to ask you a question. What's a common mistake buyers make when they're having their home inspection or before they have their home inspection? Like leading into that,
Sure.
do you run into?
I think there's a few things that come to mind. I try and caution them of like, don't get overly excited. I remember I had a home inspection
Yeah,
once where they opened the front door because they were inviting their parents to come in. And they opened the door and they're like, "Welcome to our new home." And then there was so many issues with the home. And I think for me, I'm such a relationship person that I watched their heart deteriorate
it's
with
tough.
every issue that came about. And then to cancel that contract was so hard for them. So I think one of the errors or mistakes that they make a lot of time is just because you go under contract doesn't necessarily mean you're getting those keys.
Right,
And so I think that an inspection is a really huge hurdle that we have to get over. And we have to make sure that it's safe, right? We have to make sure that it's sound and that if it's not, who's paying for that, right?
right.
Is it you? Did you write did you write the offer as is? Are the sellers going to be willing to help us? I think a lot of the times we find things from home inspections that even the sellers weren't aware of,
Oh, often, yeah.
right? So, yeah, I think that that's one of the most common mistakes as far as just getting their heart too involved and realizing, like, got to kind of keep it as a business transaction for a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah.
And then once you get that clear to close, then we can really celebrate, right?
That's good. No, and I've seen that a lot going into inspection. People come in very excited, which is great.
Oh,
I
yeah,
want them to be excited. Nothing worse than
absolutely.
having an inspection. I've had them before where the people are not excited. They're not interested in the house, whatever.
Yeah,
And then we're going through this process, and I'm like, this is just doomed,
yeah.
right? But on the other side of it too, you get people that are so excited that I hate to be the bearer of bad news in those situations, but sometimes it's like, well,
Yeah.
aren't you glad you know
Yeah,
now?
absolutely. And another thing too is like I always tell my buyer clients, the inspection is going to be about 4 hours long. I'll probably be sitting there just working the whole time. I advise that you come at least for the last hour. I think they'd be doing
Yes.
themselves a disservice if they don't come in and see it because even as an attorney who's reading that report afterwards, you don't get to touch it, you don't get to smell it, you don't get to feel it. I like that you go through those items with clients to say
Yeah.
like, here's the issues, here's what I'm looking at because even then sometimes they're like, "Where? What am I looking at?"
Yeah.
And you really like get down in there and show people like, "Here's the issue. Do you see what I'm looking at? Do you see what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
Here's what it's supposed to be." So,
No, I think that's very important. It's nothing nicer than having no one at the inspection,
you could
but
probably get in and out pretty
you get
quick.
in and out quicker. You can take your time. I mean, we take our time anyway, but you can really take your time on issues, get everything in the report. But that said, everyone I talk to, when they ask, do I need to be there? Do I have to come to the inspection? And it's like it sure would be nice if we can schedule it in a way, if if nothing else, you can be there for the last hour,
That's right.
because then we can review things. You can see things firsthand. Seeing things in the report for the first time, especially when you get a 50 or 75-page
Right.
report
Right.
and not being used to reading those reports. I mean, we try to make it clear, but we also understand
It's
that a lot
scary
of people, oh,
sometimes.
it's I totally get that. And
Yeah,
sometimes you just need it explained, um,
that's right.
put in perspective. It's better for everyone, I think, if they can be there part of the time. The hardest ones for me, and though I'm fine with it, is where we have someone like a shadow the whole time. Um, it's perfectly fine to do that, but add an hour to the inspection. Usually, it take a lot longer. But those are the ones that typically, those folks, they really want to know the house. They want
Yeah.
to know all the
Yeah.
issues. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's funny because sometimes it's not the buyer, but it's like their kid,
Sure.
right? Or the
Yep.
seller's dog has followed me the whole time,
Yep.
things like
Yep.
that. But
Yep.
anyway, I would always encourage anyone that has a home inspection, no matter what the inspector or anybody else says, just try to be there for a little bit of the inspection near the end. The beginning, we're not going to know much, but be there near the end to review, and you'll come out with a much better
Yeah,
understanding.
I agree. Good question. Thanks for
Thanks.
asking that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you were here today. I really hope that my viewers really think about, I mean, if they didn't do a home inspection when they purchased their home, I mean, what's a better way to spend your time right now than to just check in on things, look over the general issues with the home and maybe help shed some light on how can we live in the house in the safest way, right?
Right?
So I don't know if you heard of the 6 degrees of separation. Have you ever heard of that?
I have.
That's where I got this idea
Yeah.
from, right? So the idea was like, how are we connected the way that Kevin Bacon was connected to all the Hollywood
Right.
stars? So obviously, Deanna introduced me to you
Yeah.
at Polo. How did you meet Deanna? Was it through a home inspection?
She worked previously with another agent in town,
Okay.
I think kind of as an admin for
Okay.
years, and I worked with that agent. And so I'm pretty sure that is how we first met.
Such a small world.
Yeah,
So
it
I
is.
feel like our KB number just has to be that. Just
One or
Deanna.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Awesome.
There's a lot of real estate agents and a lot of home inspectors and a lot of people out there, but it is once you're at it a while, you realize it's a pretty small
Y'all know
group.
each other.
Yeah,
It's
you
interesting. When
do.
I drop your name, people all know who Jeremy is. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, that's pretty cool.
good or
I love
bad.
it. I
Yeah,
love that you knew my previous home inspector. That gave me like some trust in you already just because you knew and worked with him for so
yeah.
long. So
Well, and that told me something about you, knowing how Bill does things.
yeah, I was willing to sit for 4 hours during a home
Yeah, I'm
inspection.
glad.
Well, thank you
Well,
so
it means
much.
you care about your
I
clients.
do.
So yeah,
I do. Thank
yeah.
you so much for coming on this show.
Glad to
I
do it.
really appreciate it. I hope that all of you enjoyed meeting Jeremy as well. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe because you never know. You might be my next degree. What's your KB number?